Joining me are Bloomberg's Margaret Carlson and the National Journal's Ron Brownstein. I find it fascinating. I will never forget what was said by the VP nominee of the Republican Party a couple of weeks ago, which seems like a century ago. Margaret, you first. I've got nothing to lose. In other words, I've got nothing to lose in this race.
To Rush Limbaugh, who's, that's the wing of the party that she represents. And lately she seems to be diverging a little bit from John McCain. In that interview on NBC last night, she talked about 85% of the time to McCain. You know, we've gone from Sarah Who to Sarah Weil to Sarah, I don't know. She's a drag on the ticket. 47% say have negative feelings about her. But in the Republican Party, 3/4 of the people say they like her and she's a positive force. What she does next depends on who gets control of the Republican Party should McCain lose. If the rural, populist, real America that loves a human interest story and a frontierswoman gets a hold of the party, the more anti-intellectual wing, then she may do well. But if the conservative intellectuals who are going to try to figure out what direction the party goes in and think their way through it and come up with issues, then I don't think Sarah Palin has as much of a future.
Ron, do you think she's got a future in the Republican Party?
She was wrong when she said she had nothing to lose, because what she has lost in a very short period was the opportunity to sort of impress the country as a potential president. And, you know, right now, as Margaret was saying, on balance, you'd have to say she's a drag. And that in your NBC Wall Street Journal poll this week, 55% said she's not qualified to be president. Only 40% said she is. We polled Allstate National Journal yesterday, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Majorities in all three states say she's not qualified to be president. She can be an important voice in a faction in the Republican Party, but I think it would be an extraordinary political recovery if McCain loses to come out of this campaign and be a viable contender for the Republican nomination for president in 2012 or beyond if he loses. I mean, what has happened is a first impression. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, and the first impression that most Americans have is that this is someone who does not have the gravitas to be a plausible president. And so I think that is an inherent ceiling unless she can change that, and there's no signs that she is.
Well, the ceiling is much lower for other forms of professional life. Here, the Hollywood Reporter reports on her future options today. But as more and more polls cast doubt on the McCain-Palin ticket, producers and agents across the entertainment world are discussing possibilities for capitalizing on her fame, ranging from an Oprah-style syndicated talk show to a Sean Hannity-like perch in cable news or on the radio. Margaret, as I said, the ceiling is lower for this business than it is for president or vice president. I mean, it seems to me that if she appeals to a niche of 5 or 10% of the American voters, that's a TV show.
I'm sure she has a future on a talk show, a reality show. She started out as the Osmonds, and I think she's drifted over into the Osbournes. But she definitely can do it. Mike Huckabee, for instance, has his own show. And I think actually she and Huckabee may fight it out for that one wing of the Republican Party, and in that fight I would put my money on Huckabee. You know,
she is a Fox show waiting to happen, I suppose, but that would seem to be kind of the lesser ambition. I mean, she is going to come out of this campaign with extraordinary name identification. She has definitely the ability to connect with the Republican base. I mean, she can be a voice for an aspect of the party, but the question, as Margaret said, is what is going to be the dominant voice in the party after, and what are they going to interpret their need as being? The Republican Party's biggest problem in 2006 was they lost independence 57-39. They have the potential for another wipeout. The problem is not the base.
Suppose she changes her approach and gets rid of that windshield wiper wave of hers that's not really quite serious and comes back a couple of months from now as a serious voice of cultural conservatism and really does address the country in well-written speeches, 2 or 3 a season, and says serious things from the cultural right, doesn't do a lot of interviews, stays to her strength, which is stage performance, smart speeches, written well, and doesn't get involved with interviews with Katie Couric and the other heavyweights. Can't she do it that way? I think she can do it that way.
I think she can improve her standing. As Ron says, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Her first impression has been incredibly, indelibly imprinted on America.
Tried to be attractive, glamorous, even with the studs they gave her and the waving in that sort of nice way. It's not. Yeah, I don't think that's a way of showing your gravitas, but I think she could do it.
Because even Dan Quayle, who got to be vice president for 4 years, when he tried to come back and run on his own after that initial impression, could not get off the ground. I mean, he could not even get to the starting gate. And I think think the challenge for her would be, you're looking at very high numbers, 55% or more saying that she's not qualified to be president. That is a difficult impression to overturn.
I worked with Dan Quayle. She's no Dan Quayle. I really do think that she can manage it, because I think you can change her approach. We'll talk about this. I had a thought there. I can't remember it, but I do see a possibility here.